Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Talking Serverless Podcast. I am your co-host, Josh Proto, and today I am really glad because we are joined today by Allen Helton. Allen is a Serverless Cloud Architect at Tyler Technologies, now a company that is imagining a world where all city, county, and regional government services are connected within a healthy digital infrastructure. As an architect, Allen has a strong focus on API design and standardization, event-driven architectures, and software automation. Outside of work, he can be found running in the acres of quote-unquote fake country, as he calls it, where he will soon be tending to his own farm animals. Yeehaw! He is also an AWS community builder and a dedicated tech writer. All that info and more will be located in our podcast description below in our show notes, so please feel free to check out after this episode. Allen, thank you so much for being here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful, Josh. Happy to be here.
Rocking. I love it. I'm also doing well today, and really good to have you on for an episode of Talking Serverless Podcast. Now, I always like to start off the podcast by just getting to know a little bit more about our guests and sort of, the classic question of how did you find yourself in serverless? What led you here to this technology?
I would say accident and happenstance, as it would be. So I've been at Tyler Technologies for 10 years. And for the first 7 of those 10 years, I was a .NET engineer. Straight out of college, started building thick client apps in .NET. Had a pretty good time. I mean, I no regrets. It's been a lot of fun. But, worked my way out of the entry-level position up into a lead engineer position in that amount of time. And right around 3 years ago, I was promoted to manager / tech lead of cloud stuff in my division at Tyler. And that was about all the description that I got when we started cloud stuff. And so what we did was we did a bunch of proof of concepts in various different technologies. We tried low code. We tried an in-house tech stack that we had. And then we tried finally AWS to come in. They came in and did a 2-week primer, I guess, with us on building in the cloud. And they were pushing serverless really, really hard. And my team and I latched onto that, really, really liked it, and ran with it. That was the one that won our POC contest, if you will. We decided this is the best one. This is what we should build cloud apps in. And here we are 3 years later with a lot of experience, a lot of fun, a lot of serverless.
Wow, that's very, very exciting. I think that's also like a relatable situation for a lot of folks, or at least, there's a lot of POCs being developed and a lot of criteria that, organizations are trying to evaluate. So I know one thing I wanted to sort of ask right off the bat, because it really intrigues me, this question is, what were you looking for when you were comparing these different paradigms, serverless, different AWS services, low code? Like, what were the points where you found serverless was really over indexing for you and your team that chose you to sort of, follow this path?
Yeah. The total cost of ownership is my answer. And that's a big answer, right? There's a whole lot that you can interpret with total cost of ownership. That's how we were assessing. So total cost of ownership means as far as the company's value, where is it? Where are all the pieces of that value that come out of this tech stack or application? So it's things like developer experience, rate of development, maintainability. Can we hire somebody off the street to do it if we needed to? Is it industry standard? Things like that. And, there were, of course, pros and cons to everything. This was something that was totally foreign to us internally. We had never done anything like that. But we really weighed on, or I guess pushed on, yeah, but we can hire for it. There are people that can do this. And we can just ask. We can say, hey, I have a serverless spot open. Can somebody come help me, please? And they can, and they do. And I've done that. I've hired 4 engineers for serverless specifically, and it does not take very long to find help that way.
That's like, I think that's a That's definitely a great point to mention, like the total cost of over ownership. And from other colleagues that I've talked to, I think they would be quite envious to hear that you found it fairly easy to hire a serverless engineer. So I think it is I think it's a skill set that's continuing to grow and that way. And if you are doing really good serverless work, I think I think they do flock. I've had an easy time too, so I kind of agree with the statement. It's a good place. It's a good place to be in, and yeah, no, it's definitely a good place to be in. Now, for your current role, what would you say is like an overview of your day to day as like a serverless cloud architect? Does it are you finding that it differs from being a different kind of infrastructure architect? Is there something specific about cloud? What are some salient points about your day to day?
That is a great question. I have actually never been asked that specifically before, so we'll see what kind of clever answer I come up with. So really my job is primarily strategy. So it's strategy, right? Here's the vision. This is what we're going to be doing. This is how we're going to take the tech from where we are to where we really need to be in 3, 4, 5 years. Cloud years is like dog years, right? That's like 35 developer years. When you're talking about the cloud. But the other part of my job, I would say, is a lot of developer advocacy. It's creating content to share both internally and externally, just to evangelize serverless, make it not scary. One of the things that probably the hardest thing that I had when we started off with serverless was everybody was afraid of it. The question I got when we would start talking about it is, how are you going to manage all those lambdas? Let's say you get a really mature product. How are you going to manage them? What if you have 300? What are you going to do? And I think that was here where I am now. That's kind of a silly question. It's just code, right? There's a common misconception for people that don't do serverless that think serverless engineers poke around in the AWS console all day, every day. And that is very much not the case. It's just like writing code in any other infrastructure set or mechanism, right? It's all hosted in repositories in GitHub. You make your changes and it goes through CI pipelines and goes into AWS just using infrastructure as code. So, my answer to that question is always, how would you manage a large application? That's not serverless. It's all about structuring the code into different folders and whatnot. So a big part of my job now is making sure that people are educated so they don't ask questions like that. So they can realize that the decision that we made to go serverless was a good one. And it's basically the proof that this is how the future is shaping up to be and why you should embrace it.
Well, it certainly sounds like you have secured yourself job security for the world, at least for the next 87 serverless dog years.
Yeah.
I think in my experience at Serverless Guru, I think with clients or with prospective individuals that are considering serverless, I think there is like an education aspect that the role definitely takes when you're sort of helping shepherd an organization or a person into serverless. And there can be that fear, like, well, how do I manage it all? But at the same time, they're probably they're managing their large enterprise application anyway, and at various degrees of efficiency and various degrees of success. And so I think that's like an important a framing tool to really do and have sort of a growth mindset when it comes to these sort of conversations, because people are at different stages of their understanding of cloud and understanding of serverless. Something that I have heard or I have seen is, which I'm surprised by. And since I started working in this, I think this is a maturing of the marketplace. Of now, a lot of people I've talked to, they understand, like, I want serverless. This is the paradigm. I really want to do it, but how do I implement this? Like, where do I start? I have these Lotus servers that, haven't been updated for 5 years, and I need to move to serverless. Like, but how do I implement it? What should I be thinking about? For someone who's asking that question, how would you answer? And that's a big question. but what are some key things that you would recommend someone really consider when they're really looking to implement it?
So there's a couple ways that I can answer your question there. Let me get one clarifying question, then I'll go. So this would be someone who's trying to migrate from a legacy system
Yes, this is going to be
into
someone
serverless.
who's trying to migrate their legacy system to serverless.
Yeah, okay. I'm a big fan of the Strangler architecture pattern,
Mhm.
which for anyone who's not familiar with that, it's basically starting small. It's taking your application piece by piece and migrating it over to the cloud, to the new way, and just starting to strangle out the old stuff. And that's what I always practice and preach when it comes to serverless is just start small. Really, I always just say just start. I'm big into iteration when it comes to software. Now I say software comes in three phases: do it right, and do it better. And when you're talking about migrating a legacy system in, the first thing you have to do is just do it. Let's see what this tiny piece of functionality does if we put it over in the cloud and we just flipped a bit to make it call that instead. So that's just try, I guess, is really the moral of the story. You don't have to start big. It doesn't have to be a giant thing. You'll never know less than what you know right now. So just starting and doing it small at the beginning will help give you a better understanding of what you need to do to escalate that into a full migration. Just get comfortable with it.
No, I love that. I think that's such a great philosophy of doing it, do it better, and do it best. In that a paraphrase, because there can be so much paralysis. And I'm really interested. I have to ask a follow up of with maybe some of the clients that you're specializing in, of like governments, these larger, more public sector entities. I wouldn't necessarily say in my experience, fortunately, unfortunately, that that sort of mindset was something that I was necessarily seeing. But do you see that maybe the what is it? Does the public sector sort of get a bad rap maybe in terms of the perception of how companies are run, or maybe they are afraid of adopting new technology from what you're actually seeing?
They're not wrong. Government typically runs. This is going to sound like a large number, but it's true. Like 30 years behind everything. But the way that the Tyler's position themselves when it comes to the cloud and cloud native offerings is kind of like it's the same approach as if you were going to go to any website. Let's say we go to Google, right? It's always up. It's always there. As a consumer, I don't control the features or control anything. I don't know honestly how it works. I assume it runs on GCP, but I don't know. It just works. And that's more or less the type of approach that we're trying to take with the whole cloud initiative is you don't have to care. We'll handle all that hard stuff for you. And you can just go to this website that's always available and we'll scale no matter how many people you bring with you.
No, no,
But
definitely.
Josh, you're totally right in the sense that the public sector does lag a bit. Sometimes it just takes some disruption to make some real motion.
I fully agree in that. And I remember looking over like what was it? Like a request for proposal document for a government entity, and it sort of laid out just like the proposed project plan. And before any code was going to get written, we needed to spend a year and a half of just meetings talking about the potential plans that we were going to do. And you know that was the first time I'd ever come across something like that. And so there's so many people, like ready, fire, aim. I think there is value to fire, aim, and then fire again, of
Hmm.
having some real good contextual context of what is it like to be writing code in this environment, to be deploying it, to working with these individuals. Like there's so much tacit on the ground knowledge that an individual can gain. And as like consultants, that like the consultancy can gain about an organization, that knowledge download. And so many times there's like there's the technology problems or the technology solutions, but I also see that there is like an organizational not necessarily an organizational problem, but a change in the organizational worldview of how technology is approached, how software development cycles are approached. How often or not do you sort of see in your position that you're also sort of having to, you're also changing those a little bit as well, not just the technology itself? Are you finding they're coming hand in hand in some of these engagements?
It's getting easier. I
Nice.
don't want to be that guy that says I think the industry changed when COVID and lockdown happened, but I am going to be that guy that says I think it has really made a significant impact. And the reason I think that is because people just kind of want things to be easier now. And it, I think people have made the realization that if I can get somebody else to do this work, I don't have to. Which that's always been a thing, right? But developers, from my experience, are always really hard headed and say, I can do it better myself. But for whatever reason, staying at home for so long, people have said, I don't want to do that. I don't want to maintain it. If I build it, I'm going to have to maintain it. If I can get somebody else to do it, that's great. And so what I'm seeing with that mentality shift, what I'm seeing is there's a lot more acceptance for things that are driven by serverless, like API first design or consumption of APIs, or the concept of assemble versus build, where I can just use native services or pre-made packages or whatever. Makes everything easier and makes things not my problem. So it's been an interesting ride the past couple of years. It's been a pretty radical change, I think, in the people that I interact with.
That's exciting. I think that's really exciting to see, whether I'm either going to reinvent or like on the AWS side, or following up different cloud metrics, just to seeing, how many, like, of the various industries, what percentage is utilizing cloud, and then what percentage is using serverless inside that cloud bubble. It's growing every year, but it's also still like very, very small compared to the whole pot. And so it's an interesting juxtaposition, I think, to you know to see that data play out in real life and what that actually means as someone, you know like serving a consumer demographic for technology services and application modernization. I certainly am always finding that fascinating. um, and another thing I'd like to ask, because I may not necessarily be super sure. Now, with Tyler Technologies, are y'all primarily utilizing AWS, or is there a mix of GCP or Azure? Or I understand, like in the public sector, I know there's a lot of, if they're migrating or if they're using some sort of like paper compute service, there's a lot of GCP in that world as well. And how is that dance? The multi cloud conversations and and vendor lock in, and those sort of, I think are less problems I hear, certainly from the private sector, like none at all. But from the public sector conversations, those are questions that still happen, that I've been receiving. How do you sort of approach that? Are you seeing those decrease at all? I'm interested in your experience.
Yeah, that's another good question. These are all really good questions. Um,
Thank you.
it, there's a lot of I'm gonna say of course, but it's probably not obvious to people that aren't in this domain. But of course, there's a lot of hesitation when it comes to things like data security when we're talking about government data, right? What's your social security number? Where do you live? What's all your court addresses? What's your full background? Do you have any warrants out for your arrest? What everything about you, right? The
All the
things
fun
that the
stuff.
bad, yeah, the stuff that the malicious users want to get, it's all controlled, all controlled by the customers of Tyler. And so, over the years, they've built up all these requirements to say, I need network diagrams, I need all these things, I need IP whitelisting, I need all of this in a guarantee written in writing that this hardware isn't going to be shared, uh, so on and so forth, right? Rightly so, because this is extremely sensitive data. AWS knows that. They work with these people all the time, and they do an incredibly good job at securing all these things. All the stuff that you get just by using AWS is remarkable. The stuff that we build is in the Gov Cloud within AWS. So it has another full layer of things that you can and can't do to provide this kind of security, to maintain all these different certifications that these government agencies are looking for. So Tyler is a partner with AWS, and they are our. I can't. Tyler's a very big company, so I can't say with 100% certainty that we're exclusive to AWS.
Understood, of course.
But we try to be. We're a good partner, and we get a lot of benefit from working with them. And I think because of all the benefits that we get with AWS, all the effort that they've put forth to make everything secure, to kind of put people's minds at risk, or I said that exact opposite, minds at rest. We don't get as much pushback as we used to, in answer to your question.
All right. No, that's good to know. I think it's very interesting, and I know, like, for us at Serverless Guru, we also have like I'm sure Tyler also has a very wide, like, international marketplace, but it's been interesting to see where the client's coming from, like where the organization's coming from, what are they using, depending on where they are, both in the United States and the world. It's quite fascinating. I do think overall I have seen more of a more requests around AWS and more requests of or like less conversations about worrying about vendor lock-in or being like, we need to make this multi-cloud. Thankfully those requests have gone down just from like an operational standpoint. I just remember how inefficient sometimes those were, especially in situations where like the individual teams or the client teams had no knowledge whatsoever, and they were making their engineers or trying to learn different SINS systems at once in order to hit their deadlines because there's a government audit pending. And it's just, we can make our lives easier. If maybe I'll also agree and say maybe the pandemic and switching to a remote world made us realize that, if we can make life simpler in certain ways, potentially it's the better option.
Definitely.
So, I would say recently, would you say that there is, a project that you've worked on at Tyler, or a certain project, I don't know, within the past year that you think very much like exemplifies, the things that you love to do as an architect, as a serverless architect? Like, what was that process like? And could you walk me through it just like a little bit? You can give me the Cliff Notes version of it.
Sure. So last year was a big year for me for learning. And that's one of the things that I love about this job, is that every day I get to learn something and try to stay up to date. Cloud moves so fast. There's literally always something for you to look at. You can close a browser, open it up again, and there's something new. But last year we built an application from idea to production in 9 months using serverless. And it was a digital evidence management application called Electronic Discovery. The high level business process is police officers upload evidence to the system via web page, and then people on the justice side, the court side, can take a look at that evidence, figure out what can and can't be used in court, and pass that along to the people that actually are going to consume it in court. And that was something that architecturally, serverlessly, that was a fun experience, because dealing with files, small files, large files, it's not trivial. It takes a standard API and kind of turns it on its head, in the sense that I'm not just dealing with data, I'm dealing with a payload as well. And so, we took many iterations. We did it better, and then, or we did it right, and then we did it better over the course of that 9 months, where we just uploaded files straight through. Our very first iteration was passing in files straight to a Lambda, and then that goes into S3. But you should never do that. Lambda has payload size limit. And once you get to large files, if you try to upload let's say a dash cam video from all day, that's not going to go through Lambda. It's too large. So we had to switch over to pre-signed URLs and pass that down where it lets the client upload directly into S3 instead of passing through a Lambda function. So we learned that lesson. And then talking about these large files, these large dash cam or body cam videos, those are giant. Those are like 50 gig files. And you can't really upload that to a single upload URL. I mean, you can, but if your internet goes out or flickers for half a second, you got to restart, and that can take a long time. So we learned how to do multi-part uploads, and how do we break things up into little individual chunks to make those things go up and go faster. And again, this is all done in serverless, so we're trying to process everything, communicate with S3 to send the correct pre-signed URLs down that expire after a certain amount of time based on the size of the file, so on and so forth. And then we started doing that, and then people started closing the app because it looked like things were working, and they would come back and we're kind of out of luck. So we had to start implementing retries in multi-part uploads and resumes, and trying to figure out how do we do that all in serverless. How do you maintain that state in a stateless environment? And it was all very interesting problem to solve. And there was just no way for us to know that was coming when we were initially designing it. I mean, now I kind of know, but if I had to do it again, I'd probably end up following the same path, because it's just a very interesting set of problems that evolve as you get further down the line. But we did a lot of work with document management and whatnot, and all the serverless fun, and with files. Like, we do processing of files. If somebody uploads a PDF, we go in and determine, does it have text in it? If it doesn't, let's go ahead and OCR it using TextRact and put that text layer in it automatically. Let's detect the PII in there, the personally identifying information, and let's offer that as something that you can redact automatically. So you don't want to see this information. You don't want to show the people in the court the credit card information for this person. It's all been a really fun experience, and it's all kind of tied together with Lambda, S3, step functions, and API gateway. I would say that's 90%. The other 10%'s event firing, things like SNS and Event Bridge.
Wow, incredible. That sounds like such like a, I always love when I hear about, products that sound incredibly useful and that they're like improving the lives of users in that way. And as someone who's had to, witness and nearly suffer through several bouts of jury duty in their life, I can only imagine that would be a more efficient process than what I had previously witnessed in the courtroom. So no, that's absolutely incredible. No, definitely. And I wanted to, shift a little bit and, sort of like think about like, I know you're also an AWS community builder. How do you find the time to give back to the community when you're building things like this, being a master of cloud strategy as well? At Tyler, how do you see, your role in the space as someone who's been identified as, someone who makes this serverless world a better place?
So it ends up being a couple of different things. Yeah. First, I enjoy it. I genuinely enjoy talking about it, writing about it. So I reached out to you to come out here and talk, because I like evangelizing. I really like getting people to get excited about what I'm excited about. So I find the time. I wake up before my kids and before my wife, so I can have a little bit of time before people get online and whatnot for me to research, write some code, put something up on GitHub, and write a blog post about something that I care about, that I'm learning about. And then I turn around and use what I just did for work. There's a lot of overlap, there, because I'm just it's not just a job, which is nice. So I actually do care, and I actually am very excited about all these things. So I take the opportunity to learn, help other people learn, and then teach people internally and externally. So lots of overlap between the two, as it turns out.
Oh, that's fantastic to hear. As a wise man once told me, if you do what you love, then you'll never work a day in your life. And so, I think what you've described certainly, exemplifies some of that wisdom too, which is fantastic and can be rare. And life is too short anyway, so might as well absolutely, just love what's going on. And I think that brings me to what is it about like serverless specifically that you find I don't know that emboldens you and makes you so passionate necessarily about that, because there's so many different kinds of like cutting edge technology things that sort of like exist. So I think maybe it's not just it's a cool new technology, but what do you see that really captivates you?
That's a long list. But I'll start. It's easy. It's genuinely easy. Somebody who has never done it before could, in theory, build something, have it deploy into the cloud, and have an API that you could actually hit in like 5 minutes. That is something that you could actually do. It's a relatively low barrier to entry, and it's fun, and it doesn't matter what programming language you use, because vendors like AWS support most of them. I know I'm going to get raised on that one, but they support a lot of the mainstream programming languages. So if you want to try, you probably already know a programming language that Lambda supports,
Exactly.
and you don't
Doesn't
even have
necessarily
to.
mean you should use it, but it will support it.
True. I did mention that I was a .NET engineer for a long time. When we started in .NET in serverless, the cold starts were pretty atrocious. I know they're better now, but when we started a few years ago, it was
Oof.
like 20-second Lambda warm up time.
Yep.
And that was like, well, we got to go to a scripting language instead. So everybody learned JavaScript, and we started using Node, and got those cold start times down to a second. That was much nicer.
Perfect. And I'm sure you don't regret that transition. So
No, no, not at all.
you heard it here,
But
folks. You too can stop writing your lambdas in in C# and .NET and learn a scripting language instead, and you won't regret it. So
they are fast. I mean, to give .NET credit where credit's due, it is blazingly fast when that's hot. Pretty much any compiled language is going to be
yes.
extremely fast after that Lambda is hot. Just want to add that qualifier in there. I'm not here to slander anything.
Very good. Very good. No, exactly. The nuances is so incredibly important because what is it? One pattern does not fit all use cases, and I think I find it is very very contextual to the need, and like what is the need of the end user. Thinking for me, I like to think that technology does serve a purpose, and serverless is amazing because it does have like this lower total cost of ownership, this world where theoretically anyone could sort of pick it up and have access to many of the benefits just with their basic knowledge of software engineering. But potentially it may be an overstatement in the sense that from the work that you're seeing, are you finding that solutions are very specific to these different clients within the public sector, or they're like general architectural patterns, or at the very least services that you're seeing used all the time regardless, and the ones that pop up the most, why do you think they're being used so much?
Well, what Tyler's actually an off-the-shelf company, so we're not trying to build custom solutions for everybody that's out there. We go out and we have really good analysts. A lot of times, our analysts have worked in this space before, and they come in and we hire them at Tyler, and they help us figure out what does the industry need in this space. Like for the electronic discovery application I was telling you about, we have analysts that know exactly what that space is in justice. And of course, there's going to be nuance, but I think what we're seeing again in industry change is I don't have to have it the same way that I've always done it before. I can do it 90% of my business process and then change a little bit to do what this software already does.
Perfect. No, I think that's great. That definitely answers my question. And I think that's like it's a great approach to know that your solution is usable by the entire industry or many different individuals. So that's absolutely fantastic in that way. Now, something else that we were chatting about a bit beforehand that I'd love to get to know a little bit more, especially in the spirit of, I don't know, learning how to do things easier, or being able to, take some time to relax. I hear you're an avid runner, and that's really interesting because, what is it? My mom ran marathons all the time growing up, looped me into a lot. I never was a competitor, but I did have friends who were state and track, and then went on to do D3 and D1 sort of sports in college. And so on the spectrum of recreational runner to a hardcore competitor, how did you find yourself running, and where do you sort of fit in that?
I would say I was kind of at that bottom tier of hardcore competitor.
Wow.
Uh, so I would go out and pick your distance. I'm a long distance runner. I ran in high school. I did not compete in college, but I did start doing longer distance running when I was in college. I did my first half marathon, I think 6 months after I graduated high school, and then I did my first marathon probably 6 months after my first year of college. And I really like it. I like being able to kind of just tune out and go. And that got me a long way. I ended up competing at a pretty solid level. I was invited to a few races. Um, I competed in pretty much all the major marathons: the New York, Chicago, Boston.
Wow.
Um, there's others in there somewhere. I did a lot of trail running. I actually hold the the trail records for almost every race around this area. Um, it's been a lot of fun, and what I really like about running is the time that I get to kind of just focus on one thing. Running, I have my heart rate that's steady. Yes, it's high, but it's steady, and I just can tune out and focus. And that was one of the things. I actually wrote a blog post on it, that I attribute my software career to running, because it's given me focus. It lets me know that no matter how hard something is, it is going to end. It, without a doubt, it will always end. Mile 22 of a marathon is the worst mile, and I think any marathoner will tell you that. You still have four more, but your legs feel like they're going to fall off pretty much every time. And it's going to end. You'll just keep going, and then it'll end in whatever amount of time. And it shows that hard work pays off. I trained hard. I got up early every day, and ran hard, and then raced hard and had success. And I took that kind of mentality and brought it over to work, where I study hard and focus hard, and try to give that to other people as well.
I think that's amazing, and I think I can definitely I can definitely relate, and I can see different patterns. If you've been able to, find success in one area of life, the discipline one gains from being able to do that. It's sort of like the cheat codes, the Konami cheat codes to use in other areas. And running is really fantastic because, like, you're definitely right about that. Like the 20-second mile, like, to be able to train the mind and train the body to be able to continue to do something, even though in that moment it's not very pleasurable, it's not fun and happy and easy, but there is a reward in that completion, and the determination that gets built is it's like hard to compete with. That's definitely a skill. That's certainly a skill to have.
Yeah, not to mention, the endorphins are pretty great, and you do almost quite literally get addicted to those as well.
Oh, absolutely. And a great thing to feel addicted to is, being healthy and doing something really incredible. So it's a super win there.
For
And I'm
sure.
glad because you answered the other part I was going to ask you, which was, how related do you find running to your software development career, and how are those things tied together? Because I hadn't read your blog post, but I find it interesting. People sort of that I've talked to fall into two camps, especially when they're maybe like hyper excelling in several different in two seemingly unrelated areas, running or software engineering. There's a group of folks I talk to that falls into, this is the thing that lets me completely forget about this other part of my life, and it's very bifurcated, and I don't mix the two. And then there's others which are, it's more holistic, like it's all integrated in, they're feeding back into each other. Um, is is there one is there one that you feel closer? I'm feeling like from what you said, it's maybe a bit more holistic. But is there a bifurcation of, when you're running, you're like only running, but it definitely seems like there is some synergy between the two.
Oh, there definitely is. I couldn't even tell you how many problems I've solved at work on a run. Where I, bang my head on the keyboard for, 8 hours a day for 3 days. And then I get up and go do, let's say it's a track workout, finish a repeat. And I'm like, that's it. That's what I needed to try, and come back. And that was the answer. That's how I solved the problem. Definitely related.
Fantastic, fantastic. What is it? I had a friend who, what is it? Who once, they were like the private chef for this event at the Bohemian Grove. I don't know if you've heard of it before, but it's just like a place where a bunch of bigwigs to get together in, what is it, in like the forests of like Northern California, and you have like CEOs and CTOs and famous actors from, all over the place, and they get together. And an interesting thing he told me was that, all these people. All of them have like some artistic hobby or some athletic hobby that they're like incredible at. Like, yes, they're like a CEO of Pfizer, but they're also like a sculptor. Like these very interesting mixes and matches of skills and disciplines. So I think, correlation is not causation, but it's an interesting data point of
Sure.
extremities to sort of be at. So, keep up the marathons, and who knows what will happen next, I think. And so another thing that I had been informed of was that you sort of had something happen within the past 6 months. You moved out to the fake country in that way. What has that experience been like? I moved right before the first waves of lockdowns in 2020, and part of me can't imagine moving sort of during the COVID times, just because of all the stuff that's going on. But I don't know, what is it like? What was it like to move, and how do you like the place where you're at now?
It. I'll start with saying I feel like I moved to a chore factory
Hmm. Hmm.
in a good and a bad way. So I only moved about 5 miles from where I had lived here in North Texas, just right up the road to a place that I feel like my city has forgotten, like legitimately. This is why I call it the fake country. So I live right off of a relatively major highway. I can see it, but I'm far enough away where I can't hear it, which is nice. Um, it's just a cul-de-sac that's literally off this main highway, and there's 16 houses on this street, and every one of the houses has 2 or more acres of land, and all around us are just little, houses on their matchbox plots. That's how I would describe what I moved from. I could almost touch my back door and my fence at the same time at my old house. Uh, Moving over to something with 2 acres, and everything around my street is like that, which is why I call it the fake country, because I can look out my back window and I don't see anybody. I don't see houses. I don't see power lines. I just see my acreage directly behind my house, which is super cool. But, I can look another way and I can see a highway, and then I can see a hospital and all that. So it feels like a country when you look out the back of the house. But it's been great. I actually really like it a lot. My wife and I have always wanted a little bit more land so we can get some animals to teach our girls. Like, we have 2 girls, 3 and 1.5, and we want to teach them responsibility. So we moved out here to give them an opportunity to, that we have land that we need to take care of. So let's do that. Obviously, they'll grow into that. I'm not going to go make them ride a tractor around in the backyard when they're 3.
Exactly.
But we just got chickens about a month ago, and we've been raising the chickens from little tiny hatchlings up to full size hens. It's been very cool. It's been very fun. We really enjoy it. I would actually highly recommend it to anybody that has any desire to do that. It's definitely worth it.
No, that's fantastic. I know my partner and I, what is it? We got chicks about a year and a half ago, and now they're full grown hens. And what is it? Just like raising them, we built a coop for them. We don't have a ton of land right now, just a quarter. But I think our house is like a quarter-acre plot. But we built them a coop and everything, and just like getting to like watch them grow and take care of them is like a good distraction, but of like the things that go on in the world, but also like a good, I think, way to anchor of like what's like important, like taking care of things, being responsible, making the world and your life a better place, and your family better from your own actions, I think is something we all can really agree on. There's also really interesting data around what happens to the mind and the brain and the kind of relaxation that's possible when you have wide open spaces that you get to like live on and look out to. So I think that's something, I'm certainly trying to integrate more into my life. So that's really, really interesting. That's really great to hear that, you're already, doing that in that way. Do you have like a top list of animals that you're hoping to get? Cows, sheep, buffalo? I don't know. There's a lot of stuff you could probably do.
Yeah. So we got the chickens. We'll be good with those. I have a whole like pipeline of animals, which is a really weird phrase to say. We're definitely gonna do goats here in a little bit. We'll let the chickens mature and figure out how much the kids actually help with that. See, can we actually get another type of animal? We'll get goats. Might get some sheep. Once we get those kind of ruminants, we'll probably get a little bit bigger of a dog. I have 2 Yorkies, and they can't protect or do anything. So
they may think they can, but you wouldn't want to. They're not hurting anything.
That is true. If you ask them, they think they're 10 feet tall. That's for sure. So we'll get a bigger dog, and then that's kind of as far as our plans go for now. We'll see how it escalates. It almost always does.
No, that sounds fantastic. And what is it? I didn't necessarily confirm, but are you working remote? Are you able to, or do you have to commute in? Okay, perfect.
Yep. Working remote, which is good for today. There's a lot of ice on the road today. We don't have to go into the office pretty much ever, but we can, and sometimes that's what we do. I'll ask the team, hey, I have some things I want to whiteboard out with you guys. Can we all come in and meet up? Because as good as the virtual tools are for whiteboarding, nothing is even close to everybody getting in a room and drawn with markers on the board. So we'll do that maybe once a month. Usually it's less frequent than that, but it's good stuff.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, 'tis the theme, I think, of this, of just the conditions of the world and that sort of thing. And so something I found, I think it's been an interesting, like, I don't know, leveling of the playing field as far as like some certain things get done. Because like if everyone is learning how to work remotely, then, either like there's so many people that had to learn from scratch. And then I think in the tech space, and certainly with individuals that I've been working with, maybe we've had a little bit more experience, or we've had some experience of like, oh, I'm gonna be able to work from home one day a week or a couple days a week, or taking a vacation and sort of tuning in and still doing our work. So we sort of had like a little edge in that way.
Yeah.
And so we're all at different levels of the spectrum. Do you think right now the way the remote work situation, just like for you, is this sort of ideal in your mind, or could you imagine a different way of doing it, or a better way of doing it in the future?
I really like remote. I'm a big fan. I don't live far from work. It's about a 30-minute commute, and in Texas, that's not a long commute. But I don't have to do it. That's an hour that I get back most days that I can spend with my kids. I had a kid. My second daughter was born during the lockdown, and I have gotten to be home her entire life.
Yeah.
And so I have gotten to see her grow up in these like super critical baby phases because I got to be at home, which I would not have traded that ever. I will never trade that. I will never want anybody to not have that ability ever.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those are the things in life that you can't, you can never get back, can't replicate it, and they're so special. So that's certainly one of the benefits of remote work that, however things continue to unfold, nothing is worth trading that up. So I'm interested to see how all of that unfolds. Alan, if there's if people want to follow up with you or talk with you or like, hey, pick your brain more about serverless and potentially, I don't know, even talk to Tyler, like how would they reach out? How would they talk to you? How would they get your contact info?
Yeah, Twitter is going to be the best way to contact me, Allen Helton Dev. I monitor that pretty regularly and am happy to extend any additional methods of contact through there. But that's definitely line one.
Fantastic. No, that's perfect. And I can also, signal to the listeners that we will have that information for sure in our description and the show notes for this podcast. I definitely don't want to hold you any hang you too long. I'm glad that we have been able to chat today. Is there anything else you wanted to say before we sort of wrap up? Are there any projects or things that you're working on, or a question for the audience that you'd like them to answer?
So one of the big things that I'm spending a lot of time on in the mornings while I'm researching so I can get ready to bring back a big proposal here to Tyler is event-driven architectures. And so what I'm trying to do right now is I'm gathering feedback from everybody. What do you want to see? What do you want to know about event-driven architectures? Assuming that you know nothing, what would you want to see or hear about when it comes to event-driven? That's I'm right now just consolidating and compiling a lot of resources so I can educate people on what is event-driven, how do you track things through the system that are bounced back and forth through events, everything from head to toe. So, if there's anything that you think would be valuable to help teach somebody, I would love to hear it.
Fantastic. Well, you heard it here, folks. What do you want to know about in terms of event-driven architectures? What would be helpful for you to start this process? If you're starting the process of learning about it, what things are tripping you up? Alan will be your guy. We'll be your team to help you get that information. So absolutely, this is a good point. We can also create maybe we can create a poll too. So let's touch base on this and we can see what information we can gather.
Sounds good.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Alan, for joining us today on Talking Serverless. I've had a great time. I've had a great conversation. And to everyone listening, this has been the Talking Serverless podcast. If you like what you heard with your co-host Josh Proto, please feel free to check out our website, talkingserverless.io, and please leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this. It definitely helps us, and it helps all of our guests too. Everyone gets to learn more about all the amazing things that they're doing in the world of serverless. So thank you so much, everyone. And until next time, this is Talking Serverless signing off.